The night Victor met Elena changed both their lives forever. It was a chilly evening in San Francisco at the annual Tech Forward charity gala. The room sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the quiet chatter of the city's elite. Victor Caldwell stood in a corner, nursing a glass of sparkling water. At 32, he wasn't quite a success yet, but everyone in the tech world knew he was on his way there. His startup, NextGen Solutions, had just secured its first round of modest funding. Tonight, he was here to make connections, not to find love. But then he saw her. Elena Ramirez walked into the room wearing a simple blue dress that made her stand out among the flashy crowd. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and that's exactly what caught Victor's eye. While everyone else worked the room with practiced smiles, Elena examined the charity's display boards with genuine interest. "You actually care about the cause," Victor said, appearing beside her. "That makes two of us." Elena looked up, her warm brown eyes meeting his. "I believe technology should help people, not just make money," she replied, not missing a beat. "I'm a research scientist at Bay Medical. We're looking for partners who think the same way." They talked for hours that night, long after most guests had left. Victor learned that Elena had grown up in a small town with hardworking parents who sacrificed everything for her education. Now she developed medical devices that could help people like her father who had struggled with heart disease. Victor told her about growing up with nothing but big dreams, about sleeping on friends' couches while coding his first programs, about the rejection letters from 57 investors before someone finally believed in him. "I want to build something that matters," he told her, surprised by his own honesty. Their first date wasn't at some fancy restaurant. Instead, they met at a small coffee shop near Elena's lab. Victor brought his laptop to show her his ideas. Elena sketched possible designs on napkins. By their third date, they were working together on combining her medical knowledge with his software expertise. "We could change healthcare forever," Elena said, her eyes bright with excitement. 6 months flew by like a dream. They worked late nights at Victor's tiny office, ordered takeout, and sometimes fell asleep side by side at their desks. When NextGen faced a funding crisis, Elena didn't hesitate to invest her family savings. "I believe in you," she said simply. "I believe in us." The night Victor proposed wasn't planned. They had just received news that their latest prototype had passed initial testing. In the glow of their small victory, surrounded by empty coffee cups and wrinkled papers, Victor suddenly knew. "Marry me," he said, without a ring or prepared speech. "Be my partner in everything." Elena laughed, joy bubbling over. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Their wedding 3 months later caught the attention of local business magazines. "Tech's perfect power couple," one headline read. The ceremony wasn't extravagant, they saved their money for the business, but it was filled with love and promise. Victor's best friend, Thomas, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. "I've known Victor when he had nothing but a laptop and stubborn determination. Now he has everything because he found Elena." Elena's sister Camilla hugged them both tightly. "You two are unstoppable together," she whispered. The first 3 years of marriage tested them in ways they hadn't expected. There were failed prototypes, emergency meetings with worried investors, and nights when they barely saw each other. But they always found their way back to each other, usually over late-night takeout and problem-solving sessions at their kitchen table. When NextGen's breakthrough software finally caught the attention of major investors, everything changed overnight. Suddenly, Victor and Elena weren't just scraping by, they were on the verge of success beyond their wildest dreams. "We did it," Victor whispered one night, holding Elena close as they stood on the small balcony of their apartment, looking out at the city lights. "Everything we've worked for is happening." Elena leaned into his embrace, feeling completely safe and certain. "This is just the beginning," she said, not knowing how those words would come to haunt her in the years ahead. 3 years passed like a whirlwind. The small apartment where Victor and Elena had once shared takeout dinners was replaced by a stunning house in the hills overlooking the city. NextGen Solutions had grown from a struggling startup to the tech industry's rising star. $50 million, said Victor, loosening his tie as he walked through their front door one evening. His voice echoed through their spacious living room. "That's what the investors are putting in. Can you believe it?" Elena rushed over to hug him, nearly spilling her tea. "You did it, Victor. You really did it." He pulled back slightly. We did it, he corrected her, but his eyes were already looking past her, toward his phone as it buzzed with another message. That's when things began to change, slowly at first, then all at once. The late nights working together became late nights Victor spent at the office alone. The morning coffees they once shared turned into quick goodbyes as Victor rushed to early meetings. Elena started eating dinner by herself, watching the city lights below and wondering where her husband really was. I thought we could go away this weekend, Elena suggested one morning, sliding a brochure across the kitchen counter. Just the two of us. Remember that beach we talked about visiting? Victor barely glanced at it. Can't. I have meetings with potential partners from Japan. He checked his watch. I should go. I might be late tonight. Don't wait up. Elena tried to understand. Success was what they had worked for together, wasn't it? But she couldn't ignore how Victor had changed. The kind man who had once talked about changing the world now only talked about stock prices and market share. When invitations arrived for galas and tech conferences, Victor would suddenly remember their marriage. Wear something impressive, he'd say. The press will be there. But at these events, Victor would work the room, leaving Elena to stand alone with a drink in hand while he charmed investors and posed for photos. Later, she'd see pictures of them together in business magazines, looking like the perfect couple. The photos lied. This isn't what we planned, Elena said one night after they returned from an awards dinner where Victor had accepted Innovation Entrepreneur of the Year. We wanted to help people, remember? Your speech tonight didn't mention patience or healthcare once. Victor sighed, loosening his bow tie. Plans change, Elena. We have to be realistic. The board wants us focused on profit now. The helping people part comes later. When is later? She asked, but he was already walking away, phone in hand. Their 5th wedding anniversary came and went without celebration. Victor was in New York for meetings. He sent flowers and an expensive necklace that felt more like a payment than a gift. Elena's sister Kamila visited the following weekend and was shocked by what she saw. You look exhausted, she said, hugging Elena tightly. What's going on? I'm fine, Elena insisted, but that night, after Kamila left, she cried herself to sleep for the first time since she was a child. The next morning, something felt different. Elena woke up dizzy and nauseous. At first, she blamed stress, but after 3 days of the same symptoms, she visited her doctor. Congratulations, her doctor said with a warm smile. You're pregnant. Elena sat in her car afterward, hands trembling on the steering wheel. A baby. Their baby. Maybe this was what they needed, what Victor needed, to remember what really mattered. That evening, she prepared Victor's favorite meal and set the table with candles. She bought a small pair of baby shoes and wrapped them in a box. Victor came home late as usual. He seemed surprised by the dinner but sat down without asking questions. I have news, Elena said, sliding the small box across the table. Victor opened it slowly. He stared at the tiny shoes for what felt like forever. When he finally looked up, his expression wasn't what Elena had hoped for. A baby? Now. His voice was cold, calculating. Elena, the company is about to go public. This is the worst possible timing. Timing? Elena repeated, her voice barely a whisper. This is our child. We can discuss this later, Victor said, standing up. I need to make some calls. The IPO paperwork needs my attention. As he walked away, phone already pressed to his ear, Elena placed her hand on her stomach. She had never felt so alone in a house so large. What she didn't know then was that this was just the beginning of her journey, one that would test her in ways she never imagined. Elena sat alone in the waiting room of her doctor's office. Her 12-week ultrasound was scheduled for today, and Victor had promised to be there. She checked her phone again. No messages, no missed calls. The receptionist gave her a sympathetic smile. Mrs. Caldwell, we're ready for you now. Elena followed the nurse down the hallway, still glancing back at the entrance, hoping Victor would rush in apologizing about traffic or a meeting that ran late. But deep down, she knew he wasn't coming. Is your husband joining us today? The ultrasound technician asked as Elena settled onto the exam table. He's caught up at work, Elena said, the excuse so familiar it felt like a script. The technician nodded and began the procedure. The cool gel on Elena's stomach made her flinch slightly. Then came the steady movement of the wand across her belly. "Oh," the technician said suddenly, her eyes widening. She adjusted the wand, moving it slowly from one spot to another. "Oh my. What is it?" Elena asked, her heart racing. "Is something wrong with my baby?" The technician smiled. "Nothing's wrong, but I need to get the doctor." The next few minutes felt like hours. When the doctor finally entered, his face was serious but his eyes were kind. "Mrs. Caldwell, I have some surprising news for you," he said, taking the ultrasound wand. "Let me show you." He pointed to the screen. "Here's one baby. And here's another. And here's a third." And he moved the wand slightly. "Here's a fourth." Elena's breath caught in her throat. Four babies? "Yes, you're carrying quadruplets. It's quite rare, especially naturally conceived quads." The drive home was a blur. Elena's mind raced with thoughts of 4 cribs, 4 high chairs, 4 college funds, 4 babies who would need their mother's care around the clock, 4 children who deserved their father's love and attention. Victor didn't come home until nearly midnight. Elena was waiting in the living room, the ultrasound pictures spread out on the coffee table. "You missed the appointment," she said quietly. "I told you I had the final IPO meeting today." "It couldn't be rescheduled," Victor replied, dropping his briefcase by the door. "What did the doctor say?" Elena took a deep breath. "I'm having quadruplets." Victor froze. "What did you say?" 4 babies, Victor. We're having 4 babies." He sank into the chair across from her, his face pale. "That's impossible. How did this happen?" "It just did. It's rare but natural." Elena tried to read his expression. "The doctor says it's a high-risk pregnancy. I'll need to stop working soon. I'll need help." Victor stood up abruptly and began pacing. 4 babies? Do you have any idea what this means?" "The company is about to go public. I can't be dealing with this right now." "Dealing with this?" Elena repeated, her voice shaking. "These are our children." "The timing is all wrong," Victor muttered, more to himself than to her. "The board will question my focus. The media will turn this into a circus." "Is that all you care about? What people will think?" Victor didn't answer. Instead, he walked to his home office and closed the door. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., she went downstairs for a glass of water and noticed light coming from under Victor's office door. She heard his voice. He was on the phone at this hour? She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but as she got closer, Victor's words became clear. "Yes, I understand the prenup has limitations," he was saying. "But surely there are ways around this." "No, I need this handled quietly and quickly. The IPO is in 6 weeks, and I can't have this situation affecting investor confidence." Elena's heart pounded as she realized what he was discussing. Their marriage, her pregnancy, as if they were just problems to solve before his company went public. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door. Victor looked up, surprised, then angry. "I'll call you back," he said to whoever was on the phone. "Who was that?" Elena asked, though she already knew. "My lawyer. It's business." "Don't lie to me," Elena said, her voice stronger than she felt. "You're planning to leave me. Leave us." Victor's silence was answer enough. "These babies need their father," she whispered. "I never wanted this," Victor finally said. "Any of it. I made that clear." That night, Elena cried herself to sleep, cradling her still flat stomach, whispering promises to the 4 tiny lives inside her. "I'll take care of you," she murmured. "No matter what happens, I'll be here." She didn't know that by morning, Victor would be gone, along with most of his belongings. She didn't know that a courier would arrive with divorce papers before lunch. She didn't know that the life she had built with the man she loved was already over. Elena stared at the divorce papers on her kitchen table. The courier who delivered them hadn't even looked her in the eye. Inside was a letter from Victor's lawyer offering a settlement that wouldn't even cover the medical bills for her high-risk pregnancy, let alone support 4 children. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling a flutter of movement, her babies making their presence known. "We'll be okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure how. That afternoon, Elena called the only person she knew would help without judgment, her sister Camila. "I'm coming to get you," Camila said immediately after hearing what happened. "Pack your things. You're not staying in that house alone." 2 days later, Elena found herself back in her hometown, sitting at her parents' kitchen table. The familiar smell of her mother's cooking filled the air as her family gathered around her. "That man never deserved you," her father said, his weathered hands gripping hers. "But we will help you through this." "All of us will," her mother added, placing a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. That night, lying in her childhood bedroom, Elena made a decision. She wouldn't just survive this, she would build something new, something better for herself and her children. The next morning, she called Dr. Rivera, her old professor from medical school. "I need work I can do from home," Elena explained. "Something that uses my research skills but won't require me to be in a lab." Dr. Rivera didn't hesitate. "I have a project that might be perfect for you. A medical device company needs help designing a new fetal monitor. With your background and current situation, you might have unique insights." And so, as her pregnancy progressed and her body changed, Elena worked. From a small desk in the corner of her parents' guest room, surrounded by medical journals and her laptop, she designed and refined. When the doctor ordered bed rest at 5 months, Elena didn't stop. She converted her bed into a workstation, with notebooks and sketches scattered around her. Her sister brought her meals, her father read research papers aloud to her when her eyes grew tired, and her mother knitted tiny hats for the babies. "The company loves your designs," Dr. Rivera told her during a video call. "They think your monitor could revolutionize care for multiple pregnancies." Elena smiled, running her hand over her now enormous belly. "These 4 have been my inspiration." The birth came earlier than expected. At 32 weeks, Elena was rushed to the hospital with contractions. For 18 hours, she fought through pain and fear, holding her sister's hand. "You can do this," Camila kept saying. "You're the strongest person I know." When it was over, Elena had 4 tiny, perfect babies, 3 girls and 1 boy. Sophia came first, small but fierce with a strong cry. Then Lucia, quieter but with alert eyes that seemed to take in everything. Isabella arrived next, her tiny hand gripping the doctor's finger. Alexander was last, the smallest of the 4, but with a fighter's spirit. They spent 6 weeks in the NICU, growing stronger each day. Elena visited morning and night, talking to each baby, reading to them, letting them know they were loved. Meanwhile, her design was patented and licensed. The check that arrived, her first payment, brought tears to her eyes. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to put a down payment on a small house near her parents. "We're going home," she told her babies the day they were all finally released from the hospital. Our home. The first year was the hardest. Endless diaper changes, feeding schedules around the clock, and 4 babies who rarely slept at the same time. Elena's family formed a rotation, helping whenever they could, but many nights found her alone, singing lullabies to fussy babies at 3 a.m. But there were beautiful moments too. 4 sets of eyes watching her with complete trust. 4 different smiles developing, each with its own charm. 4 distinct personalities emerging. Who needs sleep anyway? Elena joked to Camila one morning, dark circles under her eyes, but happiness in her voice as Sophia and Alexander cooed at each other in their bouncy seats while Lucia and Isabella napped. By the time the quadruplets turned 2, Elena's medical device company had grown beyond the initial monitor. She worked from a home office, developing new technologies while her children played nearby. It wasn't the life she had planned. It was better in ways she never could have imagined. Victor's name never appeared in the newspapers she saw, but she knew from occasional online glimpses that his company had gone public with massive success. He was now officially a billionaire. "Their loss," Elena whispered, watching her children build block towers together, "not ours." 7 years passed in the blink of an eye. Elena watched her quadruplets grow from tiny babies into lively, curious 7-year-olds, each with their own personality but connected by an unbreakable bond. Sophia was the leader, always organizing her siblings into games and adventures. Lucia was the thinker, spending hours with books and puzzles. Isabella was the artist, filling the house with drawings and songs. Alexander was the peacemaker, always looking out for his sisters and making everyone laugh. Elena's company had grown too, earning her respect in the medical device industry. She'd moved the family to Boston 3 years ago for better schools and expanded business opportunities. It wasn't a luxurious life, but it was good, full of love and purpose. "Mom, we're going to be late," Sophia called from downstairs. Elena smiled, tucking a final document into her bag. Today was career day at Westbrook Academy, the children's school, and she was scheduled to speak to the third-grade classes about medical innovation. "Coming," she called back, giving herself a final glance in the mirror. At 39, she had a few gray hairs and smile lines around her eyes, each one earned through late nights with sick children or breakthrough moments with her inventions. Across town, Victor Caldwell stepped out of his private car in front of the same school. At 42, he was now one of the richest men in the country. NextGen had revolutionized the tech industry, and his face regularly appeared on business magazine covers. But today, he wasn't there as a celebrity. He was there as a potential donor. "Mr. Caldwell, welcome to Westbrook Academy," the principal said, greeting him warmly. "We're honored you're considering our science program for your foundation's grant." Victor nodded politely, checking his watch. "I have a tight schedule. Shall we begin the tour?" They walked through gleaming hallways, past classrooms filled with engaged students. Victor asked the right questions and made appropriate comments, but his mind was elsewhere. It often was these days. Despite his wealth, something was missing. His penthouse felt empty, his achievements hollow. "This is our elementary science wing," the principal said as they rounded a corner. "The children are having recess now, but—" Victor stopped abruptly. Through the window overlooking the playground, he spotted a group of children playing near the swings. 4 children who looked remarkably similar, like siblings, no, more than siblings. The resemblance between them was striking. But what froze him in place was something else. Something in the way the tallest girl tipped her head back when she laughed. Something in the serious expression of the boy as he helped a younger child. They reminded him of someone. They reminded him of... "Mr. Caldwell? Are you all right?" the principal asked. Victor couldn't answer. One of the girls had turned toward the building, and he saw her face clearly for the first time. Those eyes. They were his eyes, looking back at him from a child's face. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice barely audible. The principal followed his gaze. "Ah, the Ramirez Quadruplets, remarkable children. Top of their classes. Their mother is actually here today for career day. She's a medical device inventor." Ramirez, Elena's maiden name. Victor felt his world tilt sideways. Quadruplets, 7 years old. The math wasn't difficult. Before the principal could say another word, the playground doors opened and a woman walked out. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, and she moved with a confidence she hadn't possessed before, but Victor would have known her anywhere. Elena. She didn't see him at first. She was focused on the children, who ran to her with excited shouts of "Mom." She knelt down, listening intently to something the smallest girl was saying, nodding seriously before breaking into a warm smile. Then, as if sensing his presence, she looked up. Their eyes met through the window glass. 7 years of absence collapsed into a single moment. Victor saw shock register on her face, followed by something harder to read, not anger or fear, but a calm determination. She straightened, gathered the children closer to her, and whispered something to them. They looked curious but didn't turn around. "Mr. Caldwell," the principal was saying, concern in her voice. "Do you know Ms. Ramirez?" Victor couldn't tear his eyes away from the family to blow before him, the family that should have been his. "Yes," he finally said, his voice strangely hollow. "I knew her. A long time ago." Outside, Elena was now leading the children toward the school's side entrance, her arm protectively around Alexander's shoulders. But just before they disappeared from view, the boy glanced back. And Victor found himself looking into eyes exactly like his own. Elena hurried the children inside the school building, her heart racing. Of all the places, of all the days, why here? Why now? She had recognized Victor instantly, despite the expensive suit and the confidence that came with his billions. Some things you don't forget, no matter how hard you try. "Mom, who was that man watching us?" Sophia asked, always the most observant of the 4. "Just someone visiting the school," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. "Now you all better get back to class. I need to talk to Principal Chen for a minute." After quick hugs and promises to see them at lunchtime, the children disappeared down the hallway. Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself against the wall. Elena. She turned to find Victor standing just a few feet away. 7 years had changed him too. Grey touched his temples, and new lines framed his eyes. Success had made him more polished, but something else had made him look tired. Victor, she replied, her voice cooler than she felt. What are you doing here? Foundation business. A grant for the science program. He paused, his eyes searching her face. I had no idea you were in Boston. That was the point, Elena said. A teacher walked past, glancing curiously at them. Elena nodded politely, then turned back to Victor. This isn't the place. If you want to talk, meet me at the coffee shop across the street in an hour. Without waiting for his answer, she walked away, her back straight, her steps measured. Only when she reached the empty teacher's lounge did she allow herself to shake. An hour later, Elena sat at a corner table in the small coffee shop. Through the window, she could see Westbrook Academy across the street. She checked her watch. The children would be in science class now. Safe. Away from the complications of the past she protected them from. The bell above the door jingled and Victor walked in. Despite his wealth, he looked oddly out of place in the cozy neighborhood spot with its mismatched chairs and local artwork. He ordered a black coffee and sat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. They're mine, he finally said, not a question. Elena met his gaze directly. They're mine, Victor. You made that clear when you left. You were pregnant with quadruplets. Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you. You called your lawyer that same night. Victor flinched. I was scared. The company was about to go public. I wasn't thinking clearly. No excuses, Elena said firmly. You walked away from us, all 5 of us. Victor stared into his untouched coffee. They look like me. Alexander does the most. Sophia has your laugh. Lucia has your focus. Isabella has your creativity. Elena's voice softened despite herself. But they're all their own people. What have you told them about me? Elena wrapped her hands around her mug. Nothing. As far as they know, their father is just away. They stopped asking specific questions a few years ago. Pain flashed across Victor's face. I deserve that. This isn't about what you deserve, Elena said. It's about protecting them. They have good lives, Victor. Happy lives. And you? Are you happy? The question caught her off guard. Yes, she answered honestly. It wasn't easy at first, but I built something good. Your medical device company. I saw the article in Tech Review last month. A hint of pride crossed his face. You did it all on your own. I had help, my family, friends, but yes, I did what I had to do. And I didn't. The words hummed between them. Elena sighed. What do you want, Victor? Why are we having this conversation? He looked up, his eyes suddenly vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen in years. I don't know. When I saw you, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Regret. Elena suggested. That, and something else. He hesitated. I want to meet them, Elena. Properly. As whoever you want me to be to them. A friend. An uncle. Just someone who cares. Elena looked out the window toward the school where her children, their children, were learning and growing and becoming the people they would someday be. I need time to think, she finally said. This isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about 4 little hearts that I won't let anyone break. I understand, Victor said, and for the first time in their conversation, Elena believed he truly did. 2 weeks passed before Elena called Victor. During that time, she thought about what was best for her children, talked with her sister over long phone calls, and watched the quadruplets carefully, wondering if they somehow sensed the change coming in their lives. I've made some decisions, Elena said when Victor answered. If you want to meet them, there will be rules. They met at a park near Elena's home the following Saturday. Victor arrived early, pacing nervously by the duck pond. He'd left his expensive watch at home and wore jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual tailored suits. When Elena arrived with the children, his breath caught. Seeing all 4 together in the sunlight, their personalities shining through even from a distance, made his chest tighten with emotions he couldn't name. Kids, Elena said gently, this is my old friend Victor. He's going to join us for lunch today. 4 pairs of curious eyes studied him. Sophia, ever the leader, stepped forward first. Do you like peanut butter sandwiches? Mom makes the best ones. Victor smiled, relief washing over him. I love peanut butter sandwiches. Lunch was spread on a checkered blanket under an oak tree. Victor sat awkwardly at first, overwhelmed by the children's energy and questions. Alexander wanted to know if Victor liked baseball. Lucia asked what his favorite book was. Isabella showed him the drawing she'd made that morning. Sophia watched him carefully, as if taking his measure. You have Mom's smile, Victor said to her, then froze, realizing his mistake. But Sophia just laughed. That's funny. Everyone says I smile like Uncle Tony. Elena caught his eye over the children's heads and gave a small nod. It was okay, this time. After lunch, the children ran to the playground, leaving Elena and Victor alone on the blanket. They're amazing, Victor said, watching Alexander help Isabella climb the ladder to the slide. All of them. You've done an incredible job, Elena. They make it easy to try my best every day, she replied. What did you tell them? About me visiting? Elena folded a napkin carefully. That you're an old friend who's back in town. That's all they need to know for now. The afternoon passed quickly. Victor pushed swings, admired rocks from Sophia's collection, listened to Lucia explain the book she was reading, and raced Alexander to the water fountain. By the time they said goodbye, he felt more tired and more alive than he had in years. Can Mr. Victor come again? Isabella asked as they were leaving. Elena looked at Victor. We'll see. That night, alone in his hotel room, Victor made a decision. The next morning, he called his assistant. Cancel my flight back to New York and find me an apartment in Boston. A real one, not a penthouse. Something normal. Over the next few months, Victor became a regular visitor in the children's lives. He came to soccer games and school plays. He helped with science projects and math homework. Always careful, always following Elena's rules, never hinting at who he really was, never undermining her authority as their mother. Behind the scenes, he made other changes too. He'd established a foundation for families with multiple births, providing financial support and resources for parents facing the challenges Elena had overcome alone. He redirected his company's focus back to healthcare innovation, partnering with smaller firms, including Elena's, to create affordable medical devices. 6 months after their first park lunch, Victor sat in Elena's living room after the children had gone to bed. I've been thinking, he said quietly. They deserve to know the truth when you think they're ready. Elena nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. But I needed to be sure. Sure of what? That you wouldn't disappear again. That you're in this for them, not for yourself. Victor met her gaze. I'm not the same person who left you, Elena. I know I can never make up for those years, but I want to be part of their future, however you'll allow me to be. Elena was quiet for a moment. We'll tell them together. Next weekend. They may be angry. They'll have questions. I'll answer everything honestly, Victor promised. Even the hard parts. Even why you left. Especially those parts, Victor said. They deserve the whole truth, that I made the biggest mistake of my life, but I'm trying to be better. For them. As he drove back to his apartment that night, Victor thought about how different his life looked now from just a year ago. He had traded board meetings for baseball games, business trips for homework help. His wealth had given him everything he thought he wanted, but it took losing what truly mattered to help him find his way back to what was real. Sometimes the most important journeys take us right back to where we should have stayed all along.